Welcome everyone. My name is Rivka Rosenberg. People call me Rivki. Today I will teach you 6th graders a very interesting lesson. The lesson is called The King Who Wasn't Tall Enough. Let's begin. What will we do today? We will learn a few important words and expressions, storytelling, and a few exercises. Are you ready? Let's dive in. What do you need to prepare for this class? A few colors, a pencil and an eraser, and a notebook. Go get it quickly. The title of the story today is The King Who Wasn't Tall Enough. Look at the pictures here. What do you think the story is about? You see one king that's very, very tall, and the other king is quite short. So the story we will read today is called The King Who Wasn't Tall Enough. לא מספיק, tall enough. What do you think the story is about? Would you like to know? Follow me. First, we will compare measurements. The first chair here is tall. The middle one is taller. And the third one is the tallest. Tall, taller, tallest. This is how you compare them. Let's practice. Do you see the long legs here? So you have long, longer, longest, or the longest. The elephants, big, bigger, biggest, the biggest. Do you see the trees? Tall, taller, the tallest. And the fourth pictures here are the coffee, the fire, and the sun. Hot, hotter, the hottest. Let's go over these again. Long, longer, the longest. Big, bigger, the biggest. The big elephant, bigger, a bigger elephant, and the biggest elephant. Now the trees. The tall tree, the taller tree, and the tallest tree. Hot, the hot coffee. The fire is hotter, and the sun is the hottest. Now I have an exercise for you. Can you connect the words on the left with the pictures? Try to do this, and I'll be back soon. Hi again. Let's look at the answers to this exercise. A, long, longer, the longest. Caterpillars, of course. The long caterpillar, the longer caterpillar, and the longest. B, the big elephant. The bigger elephant is in the middle, and the biggest elephant. C, the hot coffee. The fire is hotter than the coffee, and the sun is the hottest. C, the tree is supposed to be C. Tall tree, taller tree, and the tallest tree. The C and the D are supposed to be switched. I'm sorry about that. Do you remember? The small elephant. The cone is in between the fish, and you can either say high, H-I-G-H, or tall. It's the same. The ball is very high, and the man is very, very tall. These words you should know. Important vocabulary for the story today. Jeweler. The jeweler, he makes, or he fixes jewelry. Tachshitim, tachshitan. Carpenter. A carpenter can make a desk, a table, a cabinet. A crown, you have a picture here. A throne, kisei hamalchut. And a cobbler, you have in the picture here. Professions, here are 3 professions. Miktsa'ot, the jeweler, the cobbler, and the carpenter. While reading the story, I would like you to think of the answers to the following questions. What was the king's request from the jeweler, the cobbler, and the carpenter? What did the king want from these professionals? What did he ask them? The jeweler, the cobbler, and the carpenter. Do you remember the words, the jeweler? These are the 3 words again. The jeweler, the cobbler, and the carpenter. So what was the king's request? What did he ask them? Number 2, why did the king want to be higher and higher? Think of these 2 questions while we read the story. Today we will read a very, very interesting story. It's called The King Who Wasn't Tall Enough. And the author of the story is Mel Rosenberg. And the illustrations are done by Danny Kerman. Prince Midian wasn't very small, but he wasn't very tall either. He would stand on the very highest chair and look at himself in the royal mirror. When I am king, I shall be the tallest in my kingdom. Nothing shall be higher than the king. One day, the prince did become king. He was all grown up and wasn't small at all. But he wasn't tall either. He was in between, ba'emtza, in between. He called for the royal jeweler, the tachshitan. Nothing shall be taller than the king. Make me a higher crown. But even when his new crown, he was not the tallest in his kingdom. King Midian called for the royal cobbler. Make me a pair of higher shoes, he ordered. But even with his new crown and shoes, King Midian was still not the tallest of them all. Bring me the royal carpenter. The king stomped on the floor with his foot. Nothing shall be higher than the king. Build me a higher throne at once, he commanded. But even on his new throne, the king was not the tallest of them all. The king must be taller than everything, proclaimed the king. All the people in my kingdom shall bend over and never be tall again. And so it was. King Midian was happy for a moment, but then a butterfly flew overhead. How dare a butterfly look down on the king? Capture it! The king commanded. The butterfly flew higher and higher, and soon, poof, disappeared. The king raised his hand in anger. He sent for the royal engineers. The king must be taller than everything. Build me a tower to the sky now. The king stood atop his new tower. He looked down at all the people in his kingdom. For a moment, he was happy. And then a swallow, the bird, flew overhead. Nothing must look down upon the king, he shouted. Raise me higher. Higher, roared the king. Higher, higher. The king's tower had reached the clouds. How can I know whether I am the tallest of them all, he wondered. Higher, higher, he yelled to the engineers below. So they raised the king higher and even higher. King Midian could now see the entire kingdom. He was taller than every mountain, higher than every bird and butterfly. He puffed out his chest and stood proudly. Very well, he said to himself, the king is taller than everything. You can help me come down, he called down to the engineers. What? We can barely hear you, your royal highness. Take me down, you fools, raged the king. Raged the king, sorry. What? Asked the royal engineers. Raise you even higher? The engineer raised him higher and higher still. He screamed and pounded, but no one could hear the king at all. And to this day, they still cannot. No need to bend over anymore. You can stand up straight. Now, after you have read this story, answer the following questions in your notebook. Describe what the king looked like. How did the king look? Number 2, the king complained, hu hitlonen, to different people. What did he complain about? The third question is, what did the king want the people to do? And the last question is, why did the king want to be higher and higher? Take a few moments, answer these questions in your notebook, and I will be back. Welcome back. Did you have a chance to answer these questions? Let's go over them together. Describe what the king looked like. He wasn't very small, but he wasn't very tall either. He was in between. The king complained to different people. What did he complain about? He complained he wasn't tall enough. Nothing should be taller than the king. That's what he said. What did the king want the people to do? He wanted the people to make him higher and higher. Why did the king want to be higher and higher? He was not happy with the way he was. What is the moral of the story? The moral of the story is supposed to teach you, the reader, to be a better person. How does it do that? What have you learned from the story? What have you learned from the king? I have learned that from the story that the opposite of what the king wanted. He wanted to be higher and higher and taller and taller. I think you should be happy with what you have. Of course, you need to aim for the stars and reach your goals and your dreams, to follow your dreams. But you should also balance it with being happy with what you have. So to me, this is the moral of the story. Again, the moral of the story is supposed to teach you, the reader, how to be a better person. What have you learned from the king? I have learned exactly that, to be happy with what I have. The moral of the story. Compare what the king wanted with this picture. Look at the person in the picture. What does this picture want to teach us? How can you compare the king in the story to this picture here? Think about it. Why did I put this picture here? It teaches us not to be greedy, to be happy with what you have. This picture here talks about, shows you that the person wants more money and more money and more money. You should be happy with what you have. Now, look at this picture and the text. I put here again the picture. What is the connection between the picture and the text? The text says, "Higher, roared the king, higher, higher." In your notebook, write what is the connection between the picture and the text as you see it. I will be back soon. Welcome back. What is the connection between the picture and the text I put here? Of course, the connection is that the king wanted to be higher and higher. He wanted to have more and more, just like in the picture. The person wants more and more money. So it teaches us not to be greedy, to be happy with what we have. I'd like to teach you a few important vocabulary words. The first word is author, someone who writes a book or a story. For example, the author of the story we just read, his name is Mel Rosenberg, an author. Deaf. Deaf is someone who cannot hear. blind, someone who cannot see. And university. After you go to high school, you can continue to university, Universita in Hebrew. At university, you can study usually 3 degrees, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a PhD. Today, I would like to introduce you to a very important person. Her name was Helen Keller. She passed away, of course. Helen Adams Keller, and she lived between the years 1880 and 1968. She was born in 1880 and she died in 1968. Helen Keller was an American author. She wrote many books. And what's very special about her, that she was the first deaf, she couldn't hear, and blind person to finish university. She attended university and she got a bachelor's degree, a BA degree at the university. So she was the first person who was also deaf and also blind who finished university. This is why she's so famous. She's also written many, many books. If you go on Google and you type Helen Keller, you will find a lot more of information. Helen Keller said this. This is a quote by Helen Keller. Be happy with what you have while working for what you want. What does this mean? This is a very interesting quote of hers. Helen Keller said, be happy with what you have while working for what you want. This means that you have to be happy with what you have, unlike the king in the story that wanted more and more. He wanted to be higher and higher. But you should always have your goal and in mind. You should always try to reach your dreams, but of course, at the same time, be happy with what you have. I would like you for the next few minutes to write 2 examples of Helen Keller's, what it means to you, her quote. What does Helen Keller's quote mean to you? Helen Keller's quote again is, be happy with what you have while working for what you want. So I'd like you to give 2 examples. For example, my example could be that I am happy to be a teacher, but I always want to become a better and better teacher. So I read books about teaching. I always like to learn from my friends who are teachers about ideas on how to teach you in a better way, how to use things in my lesson that would interest you. So this is one example. I'm happy that I'm a teacher. I'm happy who I am, but I always want to become better as a teacher. This is my example. I would like you to write 2 examples of what Helen Keller's quote means to you. I'll be back soon. welcome back. I hope you had time to write 2 examples of what Helen Keller's quote means to you. Be happy with what you have while working for what you want. Take a picture of this slide, and after this lesson is over, I'd like you to go on Google, find information about Helen Keller, add the information to your examples, and of course, share your work with your family, your friends, and your teacher. Now, at the end of this lesson, you can read and write new words, read a story, reflect on the moral of the story, and write examples of what Helen Keller's quote means to you. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Rivka Rosenberg, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.